What is up, guys? My name is RJ, this is the Secret Stacks, and you know I have been hyped for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. I just finished and I had so many thoughts, but I just want to do a quick spoiler-free review. But spoiler-free within reason, I am going to talk about the book. I'm not going to give away any plot spoilers or anything, but I am going to talk about characters that are in the book. So if you haven't read it, if you don't want to know anything, that is your fair warning. But what did I think? I really had a lot of fun with this read. It was a perfect way to jump back into these characters' lives. I just burst out laughing alone in my bedroom multiple times. It was just a lot of fun. Of course, that doesn't mean that the book was perfect. I will be the first to say that it almost felt a little bit based on the plot and the execution like it was almost fan fiction. And it was also very heavy on the fan service, so much so that you recognized it and you knew what was happening. That didn't make it any less fun or less enjoyable because it's called fan service for a reason. It really gives you almost exactly what you're looking for, but sometimes it's so on the nose that you're like, all right, we get it. You're just putting this in there because I enjoy it, but you know what? I'm Harry Potter trash. Of course I enjoy it. Give it to me. But maybe the most important thing to keep in mind is that J.K. Rowling didn't actually write this. She came up with the original story, but it very clearly says it was based on her original story, but was written by these two other guys. And I think you notice that really clearly in what you're reading. Maybe it's because I have been going back and really recently rereading the original Harry Potter books, but it just seems so glaringly obvious to me that at times the characters, especially the trio, also Professor McGonagall and Draco, they just didn't sound the same as they did in the book, especially in their dialogue and even the way that they interact with each other. It was almost like people were wearing costumes of the characters that you knew and loved, which essentially is exactly what the play is. But it just was a little disappointing that you could tell it wasn't Rowling's writing because she is the only person that can connect with these characters and knows them better than anyone else in the world. So you are missing that a little bit. On the flip side, it's really the new characters that we don't know, especially the children. You talk about Scorpio and Albus and Rose. Those characters really sung. They just seemed so full of life and vigor in their interactions with each other and also with their parents. And that's really where I think the greatness in this story comes from, because the writers were freed from the bounds of us knowing these original characters so well, and that they could really craft and bring to life these new characters that Rowling only just introduced. So that freedom really allowed them to create dynamic characters that I inevitably fell in love with. I mean, it's amazing, and it's exactly the opposite reason why I read the book, but it was the newer characters that I found I ended up loving more at the end of this. There was just something off about Harry, Ron, and Hermione. They were great and they were funny, but they weren't themselves in 100% way that you would recognize from the original work. And it goes beyond just them being older, because it felt like they matured and interacted in, I don't know, less believable ways. That being said, it was still really fun to see what they were doing. Also, so many instances you get little snippets of side characters from the original series that, of course, is so fun to just get glimpses of them. I had some concerns about the format just being a play because most of the plays that I've ever read were for school and I didn't love them, but really I found no problems with that setup. Of course, you get much less of the depth, and that's again something where Rowling creates such a rich original world in her works that you miss a little bit of it, but because she laid such a strong foundation, it really works getting 90% of the book in dialogue. And it also didn't seem too short either. I finished it in about 4 hours, which I ended up feeling full at the end of it. It wasn't like I needed more. I wanted more because, of course, who doesn't want more Harry Potter? But it wasn't like the story left me lacking. I felt like I got enough and it resolved everything. And that's another thing. At the end of the Deathly Hallows, there were a lot of unanswered questions, especially after the time jump when they're standing there waiting for the Hogwarts Express. there were a lot of unanswered questions just about the characters and where they ended up. A lot of those questions actually get answered. So it feels like the canon tightens a little bit more. So there's a little bit less room for some of those more wild fan theories that are out there. But in a way, that's great because it does give us more information. In another way, it's a little discouraging because it feels like this could be the final piece. There's not necessarily, I didn't feel like there was definitely going to be a sequel. It doesn't feel like there really does need to be a sequel. On the other hand, with the success of this, it'll be really interesting to see if J.K. Rowling can actually stay away, because this release was huge, the movie release was huge, this play will inevitably become a movie. I can guarantee you of that. And it's actually going to be really interesting to see how it's performed on a stage, because they do not skimp on the magic at all, at least in this version. So it'll be very intensive and very interesting to see how they pull some of this stuff off without the advantage of CGI. Which is why I think ultimately this may translate even better onto the screen. Of course, the problem is that we're not going to ever get this on the screen until maybe the original actors are old enough to play their true characters, because the CGI aging up at the end of the final Deathly Hallows movie was so horrendous that I think all of us want to wait until the actors are older before we bring them back into these roles. But I do think, and maybe this is just me hoping, that will inevitably be what happens. But all in all, it was just a lot of fun, so much so that even despite some of the more stereotypical tropes in the fan fiction-y feel, I'm ready to give this a 4 out of 5 stars. It's not perfect, I'll be the first to admit that. Really just based on fun, I had 5 out of 5 fun, but there are some serious plot holes and fundamental flaws that they do as well as they can address, but they are limited based on this being a stage play and based on their time constraints on being able to fit it into a 2-hour or so play. It's inevitably going to not match up to the books, but that's okay, because it doesn't really need to for you to really enjoy this story. Anyway, that is it for my initial thoughts, but very curious to hear what you thought down in the comments below. Just try to keep it spoiler free just in case anybody hasn't read it yet. And if you guys are interested, I may go ahead and do a stupidly random thoughts video that gets more into spoilers, more into my reactions on what made me laugh, both in a good way and also a stupidly cringeworthy way, which is still enjoyable because there were plenty of both. But also let me know if you're interested in that down in the comments below. Until next time, see ya.